My name's Sloane Brakeville. I'm the current CEO of Freight Network. And in short, what we're trying to do is bring a shipment protocol that's blockchain enabled into the current ecosystem of supply chain. A little bit about me. A blockchain believer since 2012. I came across it in 2012 to do some nefarious things. I wanted to get a membership to a torrenting website. So kind of forgot about it for a while, but in 2013 got reinvigorated thanks to a sort of perfect storm of curriculum I was studying at the University of Georgia. This business and technology background from my MIS degree, combined with some monetary theory courses I was taking in economics, was really just this convergence of information that really enlightened me to the power of what Bitcoin and blockchain, and then at the time Ethereum, could really do. I was an ex-IBMer. While I was there, I helped bootstrap this program called the Blockchain Labs here in North America. While I was there, we did projects in finance, we did projects in music, we did projects in advertising technology, and then the last thing that I was working on was supply chain, which to me has always been a perfect use case for blockchain technology. The way we went about these projects and problem solving involved a lot of design thinking. We were involved in lean startup practices where a lot of projects got started quickly, and we wanted to make sure that if hypotheses were tested and they were not true, then we can sort of scrap our ideas. And I brought that into my experience here at Freight Network. I originally started as the CTO, and what we did was take advantage of my co-founder's company, John, who is the owner of a shipping group called Lewis Co. Holdings. Today, this year, they're projected to do about $5 million worth of shipments. So their story was really inspiring to me. He always told me about the challenges that he was having solving the U.S. trucking industry, focusing on some of the stories that he had, like when he first called FedEx to negotiate a rate directly with them as opposed to going through their online portal, he managed to get an 80% discount. And that kind of enlightened him to some of the experiences that people like brokers or middlemen in this industry were having working with these large shipping companies. During my studies of the trucking industry, of course, I started looking at global challenges and realized that the North American trucking industry had a lot of similar issues with trucking industries all across the globe. But beyond that, there were also a lot of relevance between the challenges at the sort of inland supply chain with the global supply chain. So if you're having communication and data being shared amongst trucking companies, that same information needs to pass, oftentimes through paperwork, between the multimodal ways of shipping, like rail cars or ocean vessels or airplanes. And so we pivoted a little bit. We still are sticking to our guns of the trucking industry being a very valuable place to start. But what we recognized was that because we focus on the trucking industry first doesn't mean what we learn can't be applied globally. And we'll talk about sort of what that means in a second. But real quick, I want to tell you a story about how a shipment of iPhones can move from a factory in China to a retail store out here in the US. It's a very convoluted story. There's a lot of actors touching it. While I was at IBM, we actually did a study. There was over 300 documents that changed hands, and up to a third of the total cost of that shipment of goods moving globally could just be in the paperwork itself. But it starts with the manufacturer packaging up these phones and putting them onto a container to get moved out. A trucking company then gets contracted, and the trucking company is going to be taking that from the factory to the port, where they have to have appropriate paperwork, identification, and clearance to get into customs. That truck is going to then offload their container, put it onto a ship. It's going to go 2 to 6 weeks across the ocean. It's going to land at the port, like in LA here, where it's going to be offloaded onto another truck that, in just the same way, had to present a bunch of documents, authorization, identification, etc. It'll move to the next mode of transportation. Say it's going across the country, they want to use rail. So it's got to go into a rail yard where, again, that same paper trail has to travel with the container and gets offloaded from that truck, or from that rail, to another truck, moved to a distribution center, where it's finally loaded onto another truck and push to the final destination, like your retail stores here, like a T-Mobile store, for example. This story is actually very similar to a story at sort of like the macro or the micro level. So from the distribution center to that final retail store, there's still a lot of paperwork that needs to get handed off. And just because it's the final touch point doesn't mean it's any less convoluted. You can essentially just kind of copy and paste a lot of the same challenges in this final mile to the global challenges that you were seeing. So where are we now? What we decided to do was extract everything that we learned from final mile and localized trucking and start defining standards, standards around data. So a shipment that needs to move from a port to a truck to get onto a rail, for example, needs to have certain information about what's in that container. So you establish communication standards that will tell you about the status of that shipment. Where is it right now? What's inside of it? As well as documentation standards. So the data that's put into these bills of lading that are flowing across the supply chain is very well known, very understood, and you can turn those into sort of standards. Payment standards. With the blockchain-enabled value transfer that we've seen through smart contracts on Ethereum and Bitcoin, there's new ways of moving value around. If you've completed a part of your shipment, you can get paid a part of that, the total cost that you're supposed to be rewarded. Regulatory standards. So when you go into a port, there's things you have to know about a customs authority. Maybe there's an embargo on your goods, so you have to skip that port. And being aware of that is actually very challenging. So putting in standards that can be implemented without you really knowing about it when you have these programmatic smart contracts is actually very valuable. And then finally, cybersecurity standards. So you want to trust that the data moving back and forth between your implementations of these protocols is secure and trustworthy. So implementing this protocol, you're given a coordination platform. And coordination platform consists of applications, effectively. You can have distributed applications, like a marketplace for contracting with truckers or with carriers. And then you can have standard applications where maybe your shipments are being managed by something like SAP or Oracle. We're going to give you opportunities to connect to this protocol in the same way. Those will be deployed on your standard platforms as well, right? Your smart contracts may land on Ethereum, and then your traditional apps are going to be something like AWS. So what are we doing? We're starting out with our own trucking coordination platform first. We have your Freightfolio, which is used as sort of a visualization of the current shipments that you have. You have your freight board, which is going to help you match with carriers in case you don't have relationships with truck drivers. This exists kind of as a digital broker, digital middleman. Browser extensions for if you want to use your enterprise web applications but still need to interact with this protocol layer. And then a carrier app for truck drivers that are on the road to provide quick and easy updates to that shipment contract. So where are we now? We're in a private pre-sale, so let me know if you want to get involved. We have an operational beta. John's company, Lewis Co. Holdings, is currently using our beta product, which is that Freightfolio I just mentioned before. And we're seeking partnerships. So if you are a shipper or a carrier or broker, know somebody in the logistics industry, get them in touch with us. We'd love to have a conversation.